For 23 years, I believed I was born to serve. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. That's what Eleanor Hale told me the night I turned 9 while I scrubbed red wine stains from her dining room carpet with bleeding hands. Some girls are born to be cherished, she said calmly, sipping champagne while guests laughed upstairs. And some are born to make life easier for everyone else. Then she smiled. And you should be grateful we gave you purpose. I believed her, because when you're raised in captivity long enough, abuse stops feeling cruel, it starts feeling normal. My name is Brielle Hayes. At least, that's the name I thought belonged to me. For most of my life, I lived in the basement of a 6-bedroom estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, while the Hale family lived upstairs pretending I barely existed. The basement wasn't technically unfinished. That's how Eleanor justified it to guests. She prefers privacy, she'd say with a light laugh whenever someone accidentally noticed the thin mattress beside the furnace room. Privacy. Interesting word for a concrete floor with no windows. Every morning my alarm rang at 4:45 a.m. By 5, I was upstairs preparing breakfast before Gregory Hale came down in his silk robe expecting espresso already poured. By 6:30 I'd packed lunches, pressed clothes, polished marble counters, fed their golden retriever, and cleaned whatever mess my brother left behind the night before. Nathan Hale was 26 years old and had never washed a dish in his life. Why would he? I existed. To him, I wasn't family, I was infrastructure. Brielle, my car keys. Brielle, fix my shirt. Brielle, clean my bathroom before Olivia gets here. Not once in 23 years did he ever introduce me as his sister. Usually he called me the house girl. His fiancée, Olivia, never questioned it either. None of their wealthy friends did, because rich families know how to hide abuse beautifully, especially behind politeness. From the outside, the Hale family looked perfect. Gregory was a corporate attorney. Eleanor chaired charity galas. Nathan worked in private equity thanks to Olivia's billionaire father, Charles Whitmore, country clubs, European vacations. Designer kitchens, old money manners. Meanwhile, I owned 3 dresses, none of them purchased for me. At dinner, the Hale family ate together beneath a crystal chandelier while I stood silently near the kitchen doorway waiting to clear plates. One night when I was 13, I asked Eleanor why I couldn't sit down too. She looked genuinely confused by the question. The table seats 4. It seated 8, I counted every night. That same year, Gregory taped 4 rules to my basement door. Rule 1, you do not call us mom or dad. Rule 2, you do not speak unless spoken to. Rule 3, you do not leave the property without permission. Rule 4, you remember what you owe us. The punishments lived in the pantry. A narrow bamboo cane hidden behind canned soup. Gregory only used it twice. After that, fear handled the rest. When I was 16, I tried running away. I saved grocery change for months and walked 3 miles to a bus station carrying everything I owned inside a duffel bag. Police brought me back within hours. No identification, the officer said apologetically at the front door. No birth certificate either, Gregory smiled warmly. She's our daughter, troubled history, mental health struggles. The officers left. Gregory locked the basement door from outside that night, then crouched beside me in darkness and whispered something I never forgot. Without documents, you don't exist. For 7 more years, I stopped trying. Then Nathan got engaged, and everything started unraveling. Olivia Whitmore came from one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. Old money, private jets, real estate empire. The kind of family Gregory spent his entire life desperate to impress. Their wedding was scheduled at the Grand Regent Hotel in Manhattan. 200 guests, ice sculptures, 12-piece orchestra. The total cost reportedly exceeded $500,000. In my role, serving champagne in a black uniform while pretending not to belong to the family standing 50 feet away. But 3 nights before the wedding, Olivia's father looked directly at my face during rehearsal dinner preparations and nearly dropped his glass. Before I tell you what he asked me, and why that single question eventually led to FBI agents showing up at the Hale estate, take a second to like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional family drama stories like this. And tell me honestly in the comments, have you ever felt invisible inside your own family? Because I spent 23 years believing I was nothing, until one stranger looked at me like he'd been searching for me his entire life. The first time Charles Whitmore saw me, He forgot what he was saying mid-sentence. It happened during the rehearsal dinner at the Whitmore estate 3 nights before Nathan's wedding. The mansion looked like something ripped from a magazine spread. White stone columns, imported chandeliers, gardens trimmed so perfectly they almost looked artificial. Every surface screamed generational wealth. Meanwhile, I stood near the catering station in a black serving uniform carrying a silver tray of champagne glasses while trying not to make eye contact with anyone important. That was one of Eleanor's biggest rules. Invisible girls survive longer. Olivia floated through the crowd in a cream silk dress greeting relatives while Nathan followed behind her smiling like he'd personally built the Whitmore empire himself. Gregory stayed close to Charles Whitmore all evening, laughing too loudly at every joke, performing wealth, performing status, performing belonging, and honestly, it almost worked, until Charles looked at me, not glanced, looked. His expression changed instantly, like someone had punched all the air from his lungs. I noticed because wealthy men rarely react emotionally in public, but Charles Whitmore went completely pale. He stared at me so intensely I nearly dropped the champagne tray, then slowly he walked toward me. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his voice sounded unsteady. "Yes, sir. What's your name?" "Brielle." He swallowed hard immediately. "Brielle what? Hale?" The silence afterward felt strange, heavy somehow. Behind him, I saw Gregory watching us from across the ballroom, and for the first time in my entire life, Gregory Hale looked nervous. Charles studied my face carefully, my green eyes, dark hair, the small crescent-shaped birthmark near my jawline. Then finally he whispered, "How old are you?" 23. His hand tightened visibly around his drink. "Do you know who your biological mother is?" The question hit me so hard I genuinely thought I misheard him. "I'm sorry, your real mother," he repeated softly. "Do you know who she was?" My stomach twisted instantly. Because children raised like me learn very early not to ask questions about origins. Questions create punishment. "I live with the Hales," I answered carefully. "They raised me." Charles looked heartbroken, not confused. Not curious, heartbroken. Then suddenly he stepped back like he realized he'd said too much. "I apologize," he said quickly. You remind me of someone." Before I could answer, Gregory appeared beside us almost instantly. Too fast, like he'd been watching every second. "There you are," Gregory said tightly. His smile looked polished, but his eyes were ice. "Brielle, the kitchen needs you." Charles didn't move. Instead, he kept staring at me with growing disbelief. Gregory laughed softly. "She's shy," he explained to Charles. "We practically raised her ourselves." Practically, interesting word choice. Charles glanced between us slowly, then nodded once, but something about his expression changed completely, like a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. The second I returned to the kitchen hallway, Eleanor grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "What did he ask you?" "Nothing. Don't lie to me." Her nails dug deeper into my skin. I lowered my voice immediately. "He asked about my mother." For one terrifying second, all color disappeared from Eleanor's face. Then she recovered instantly. "That man drinks too much," she snapped. "Stay away from him." I nodded automatically, but deep inside something had already shifted. Because for the first time in 23 years, someone looked at me like I mattered. Not useful, not convenient, important. Later that night, after guests finished dessert and the orchestra packed away their instruments, I carried empty glasses through the estate library and overheard Gregory whispering furiously behind partially closed doors. "You said the child was never found." Silence. Then Eleanor's voice, "Lower your voice. She has Margaret's eyes." My heartbeat stopped. "Margaret? Who was Margaret?" "She was 6 months old," Eleanor hissed. "No one could have predicted this." Gregory sounded panicked now. "If Whitmore suspects anything, he doesn't know anything yet." Yet, that word echoed through my head all night. I barely slept afterward, not because I understood what was happening. Because I finally understood something worse. The Hales were afraid. And people like Gregory and Eleanor Hale only fear one thing, the truth. The next morning, I woke at 4:45 like always, made Gregory's espresso, pressed Nathan's tuxedo, steamed Olivia's bridesmaid table linens, pretended everything was normal. But inside, questions had started growing for the first time in my life. Why didn't I look like them? Why did I have no documents? Why was I never allowed to leave? And why did Charles Whitmore stare at me like he'd seen a ghost? The wedding day began at 4 a.m. Not for the bride, not for Nathan, for me. I woke to Eleanor pounding on the basement door hard enough to rattle the furnace pipes. "Get upstairs," she snapped. "The florist arrives in 20 minutes." I pulled on black slacks and hurried barefoot through the cold basement hallway while the Hale mansion still slept peacefully above me. By sunrise, I'd already pressed 6 garment bags, prepared breakfast trays, polished silverware, loaded gift baskets into limousines, and steamed Olivia's $12,000 wedding gown while Eleanor hovered beside me like I was dangerous. "Don't touch the lace," she warned sharply. "That dress costs more than your life." I apologized automatically. That's what survival teaches you. Apologize first, exist second. By noon, the Grand Regent Hotel looked unreal. Crystal chandeliers glowed above massive floral installations. White orchids hung from the ceiling like waterfalls. Every chair wore gold silk covers. Even the air smelled expensive somehow. The Hale family entered through the front lobby. I entered through the service elevator carrying champagne trays. Different doors, different worlds, same building. That pretty much summarized my entire life. Nathan spent the afternoon posing for photos with his groomsmen while Olivia disappeared into bridal preparations upstairs. I only saw her once before the ceremony. She smiled kindly when she passed me near the ballroom entrance. "You look exhausted," she whispered softly. I froze slightly. No one usually noticed things like that about me. "I'm fine." Her eyes lingered on my face thoughtfully, then quietly. "My father keeps asking about you." Fear rushed through me instantly. "Why, I don't know," Olivia admitted, "but he's been making phone calls since rehearsal dinner." Phone calls about me. My stomach tightened painfully. Because nothing good had ever followed adults discussing me privately. Across the ballroom, Gregory suddenly appeared, watching us. The warmth disappeared from Olivia's expression immediately. "We should talk later," she whispered quickly before walking away. Gregory approached slowly after she left. "You seem popular suddenly." "I didn't do anything. Charles Whitmore asked for your full name this morning." His voice stayed calm. Too calm, the dangerous kind. "I told him Brielle Hale." Gregory stared at me for several seconds, then leaned closer. "If he asks more questions," he said softly, "you answer carefully." Something cold moved through my chest. "What does that mean?" "It means you owe us loyalty." Us, interesting word considering I wasn't allowed to sit at their dinner table. Before I could respond, Eleanor called from across the room. "Brielle." "The champagne tower?" I escaped immediately, but the fear stayed. The ceremony itself felt like watching someone else's dream through glass. Olivia walked down the aisle beneath white roses while a live orchestra played softly. Nathan cried during his vows. Gregory and Eleanor sat proudly in the front row pretending to be perfect parents. And I stood near the back holding silver trays while guests walked around me like I was furniture. Then came the family photographs, and everything changed. The photographer positioned the Whitmores first beneath a massive floral arch. Charles, his wife Evelyn, Olivia, several elegant relatives dressed in pastel designer clothing. Then the Hales stepped forward. Gregory adjusted his tie. Eleanor fixed Nathan's boutonniere. I stayed back automatically beside the catering staff, invisible. The photographer scanned the group, then frowned slightly. "Shouldn't she be in this one too?" He pointed directly at me. Instant silence. Gregory smiled tightly. "Oh, she works for us." "Works for us, not she's family, not she's our daughter, just works for us." The photographer looked uncomfortable, but before anyone else could speak, Charles Whitmore stepped forward. "No," he said firmly, "she belongs in the photo." The ballroom went completely still. Gregory laughed nervously. "Charles, there's no need." "Yes," Charles interrupted calmly. "There is." Then he looked directly at me. "Come stand beside me, Brielle." My heart started pounding violently. I shouldn't." "You should." His voice softened slightly. "Please?" Every eye in the ballroom turned toward me as I slowly crossed the floor, still holding the champagne tray. Gregory looked furious. Eleanor looked terrified, not annoyed, terrified. That's when I realized something horrifying. They weren't afraid of embarrassment anymore. They were afraid of exposure. Charles placed one hand gently against my shoulder while the photographer adjusted the camera. Then quietly, almost under his breath, he whispered, "That birthmark?" I froze, the crescent-shaped mark near my jawline. The one Eleanor always forced me to cover with makeup during parties. The photographer took several shots quickly, flash after flash. And during the final photo, I saw tears forming in Charles Whitmore's eyes. Real tears. Then suddenly he stepped away from the group and pulled out his phone. I only caught fragments while he spoke urgently near the ballroom entrance. Need the old case files? DNA confirmation immediately? If this is really her, not it, her. My pulse thundered painfully inside my ears, because deep down, before I even understood why, I already knew my entire life was about to explode. After the photographs ended, Gregory grabbed my arm so hard his fingernails cut into my skin. Kitchen, now! His smile stayed perfectly pleasant for nearby guests while he dragged me through a side hallway toward the service corridor behind the ballroom. The second we were alone, the mask disappeared. What did you tell Charles Whitmore? Nothing. Don't lie to me, I swear. He shoved me lightly against the wall beside stacked catering crates, not enough to leave bruises. Gregory was always careful about visible damage. He's asking questions, he hissed. Questions he should never be asking. My breathing turned shallow instantly. What's happening? You don't need to know. Eleanor appeared seconds later, still wearing her champagne-colored designer gown. But now she looked panicked, actually panicked. Charles made another phone call, she whispered sharply to Gregory. He's bringing someone here. Gregory swore under his breath, then both of them looked at me simultaneously. Like I was a problem, not a person. A problem. You will say nothing, Eleanor snapped. If anyone asks you questions, you answer exactly the way we taught you. I stared at her. For 23 years, I obeyed automatically, but now. Something inside me had cracked. Who's Margaret? The silence afterward felt deadly. Eleanor's face lost color instantly. Gregory stepped forward so fast I flinched. Where did you hear that name? So it's real? Answer me. I heard you arguing. Gregory looked ready to explode. But Eleanor grabbed his arm suddenly. No scenes, she whispered. People like the Hales cared about appearances more than anything. Even now, especially now. Eleanor turned back toward me carefully. Margaret Whitmore was Charles's sister. My chest tightened. Why does that matter? It doesn't. Then why are you both terrified? Gregory's jaw clenched hard enough to twitch. We gave you a home, he said coldly. Remember that before you start acting ungrateful? Ungrateful. Interesting word considering they kept me trapped in a basement without identification for most of my life. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Charles Whitmore appeared, and he wasn't alone. A woman in a gray suit followed beside him carrying a leather folder. Charles stopped the second he saw Gregory holding my arm. Something dangerous flashed across his face immediately. Is there a problem? Gregory released me instantly. Of course not, he said smoothly. We were discussing staffing issues. Charles ignored him completely. His eyes stayed fixed on me, then softly. Brielle, would you come with me for a moment? Gregory stepped forward immediately. She has responsibilities here. I wasn't asking you. The temperature in the hallway dropped instantly. Because for the first time, someone with more power than Gregory Hale had entered the room, and Gregory knew it. Charles gestured gently toward the woman beside him. This is Claire Donovan. She works with family legal investigations. Legal investigations, my stomach dropped. I don't understand. You deserve answers, Charles said quietly. Gregory laughed suddenly, sharp, fake. This is becoming ridiculous. No, Claire interrupted calmly while opening the folder. What's ridiculous is a 23-year-old woman with no birth certificate, no social security number, no school records, and no legal identity whatsoever. Silence. Absolute silence. I looked at Gregory, then Eleanor. Neither denied it. Claire removed several photographs from the folder carefully, old photographs. One showed a woman holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket, dark hair, green eyes. The exact same eyes staring back at me from mirrors my entire life. My breath caught painfully. Who is that? Charles swallowed hard. My sister? The hallway suddenly felt too small, too bright, too unreal. Her name was Margaret Whitmore. My hands started shaking immediately. The baby she's holding, he continued carefully, disappeared from Stanford Medical Center 23 years ago. No one moved, no one breathed. She was kidnapped from the hospital nursery at 6 months old. I stared at the photo again, the baby's tiny face, The crescent-shaped birthmark near her jawline, exactly like mine. No, I whispered, it couldn't be. It absolutely could not be. Charles's voice cracked slightly. We've been searching for her for 23 years, Gregory finally snapped. This is insane. Is it? Claire asked calmly. Because we already completed preliminary facial comparisons. She pulled out another document. And Charles Whitmore requested emergency DNA confirmation this morning. My heartbeat slammed violently against my ribs. DNA, the word barely felt real. Eleanor suddenly stepped toward me. Brielle, listen to me carefully. No, Charles interrupted. You've spoken enough. Then he looked directly into my eyes. And I will never forget the grief in his face when he said, if the DNA confirms what I believe, his voice broke, then you were never their daughter at all. The world tilted beneath me. Because suddenly every locked door, every punishment, every missing document, every moment of being treated like less than human started making horrifying sense. I couldn't breathe, not metaphorically, actually breathe. The hallway walls blurred while Claire Donovan slid the DNA consent form across the catering table between us. One signature. That's all it would take to destroy the only reality I'd ever known, even if that reality had been cruel. Gregory stepped forward immediately. She's overwhelmed. No, Charles Whitmore said quietly. She's terrified. Then he looked directly at me again, and for the first time in my life, someone looked at me like my fear mattered. Not inconvenient, not dramatic, real. My hands trembled violently as I stared at the consent form. What happens if the test matches? Silence. Then Charles answered carefully. If it matches, then you are Brianna Whitmore. Whitmore, not Hale. The name felt foreign inside my chest. Impossible. But that means, it means, Claire interrupted gently, someone took you. Gregory exploded instantly. This is insanity. You can't walk into my son's wedding making accusations based on eye color and paranoia. Claire calmly opened another folder. We're not basing this on eye color. She slid several documents onto the table, hospital reports, missing child notices, old newspaper clippings. One headline immediately caught my attention. Infant daughter of WHITMORE heiress abducted from California hospital. My knees nearly gave out. 23 years ago, exactly my age, Eleanor suddenly grabbed my hand tightly, too tightly. Brielle, she whispered urgently. You are confused right now. These people are manipulating you. These people. Interesting. Not they're wrong, not this is impossible. Manipulating because deep down Eleanor already knew the truth. Charles's voice hardened. Let her decide for herself. Gregory laughed bitterly. After everything we've done for her, I finally looked at him fully, really looked. And suddenly I saw something I'd never noticed before, not authority, not strength, fear, raw fear. You kept me in a basement, I whispered. Gregory's expression shifted instantly. That's not what this is about. You never let me go to school. We protected you. You said I didn't exist. That was for your safety, safety. The word almost made me laugh. Then Claire quietly asked the question that changed everything. Brielle, have you ever seen your birth certificate? Silence. Social security card, nothing. Any adoption paperwork? My stomach twisted painfully because I already knew the answer. No, I had nothing, no records, no proof, no history outside the Hale estate. Charles softened his voice carefully. My sister Margaret spent 5 years searching for her daughter before she died. Died. The word hit me hard. What happened to her? His eyes filled instantly. She never recovered from losing you. Something inside me cracked open. Because somewhere out there had once been a woman desperately searching for me while I scrubbed floors believing nobody wanted me at all. Tears burned my eyes immediately, and Gregory saw it. Panic flooded his face. She's emotional, he snapped quickly. This is exactly why we protected her from outsiders. Outsiders? Interesting choice considering I apparently wasn't their daughter. Charles stepped closer slowly, then carefully reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old photograph. The edges were worn soft from being handled too many times. In it, a young woman with dark hair smiled down at a baby wrapped in pale pink blankets. Green eyes, my eyes, the same crescent-shaped birthmark near the jawline, my birthmark. My chest tightened so painfully I thought I might collapse. That's impossible. Charles's voice broke. She wrote letters to you every week after you disappeared. I stared at him. What? She believed you'd come home someday. Home, the word destroyed me because no place had ever felt like home before. Then suddenly Eleanor snapped. She was 6 months old when she came to us. Everyone froze, complete silence. Gregory turned toward her slowly. Eleanor! Too late, her face drained white instantly. Claire's expression sharpened immediately. When she came to you, Eleanor realized what she'd done. Gregory looked furious now, but the damage was already done. Charles stared at Eleanor with pure horror. You knew. No, you knew exactly who she was. The hallway erupted instantly. Gregory shouting, Claire demanding answers, Eleanor crying, hotel staff staring from nearby corridors. And through all of it, I stood completely still holding the photograph of the woman who might actually be my mother. Then Charles looked at me again, softly, carefully, almost afraid to scare me away. We can do the DNA test tonight. My entire body trembled, because deep down I already knew what the results would say. And if I was right, then the people who raised me weren't my family at all. They were the people who stole me. The DNA test took less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes to unravel 23 years of lies. Claire Donovan used a sterile cotton swab inside my cheek, while Charles Whitmore stood nearby trying unsuccessfully to hide how badly his hands were shaking. Gregory and Eleanor were escorted from the hotel shortly afterward. Not arrested, not yet, but watched closely. The wedding reception downstairs continued somehow. Music, champagne, laughter. Meanwhile, above the ballroom, inside a private hotel suite, my entire identity sat sealed inside a laboratory evidence bag. Nathan arrived nearly an hour later looking furious and confused. What the hell is happening? No one answered immediately, because honestly, where do you even begin? Your parents might be kidnappers, your sister might not be your sister. The housekeeper you ignored your whole life might actually belong to the billionaire family you just married into. Nathan looked between everyone impatiently, then finally at me. Brielle! That name suddenly felt strange, temporary. Like clothes that never belonged to me, Charles faced him directly. We believe she's my niece. Nathan laughed automatically, a sharp, nervous sound. That's insane. Claire slid the missing child report toward him silently. I watched the color drain from his face line by line. Then came the photograph, the baby, the birthmark, the dates. Nathan sat down heavily. No, but unlike Gregory, Nathan didn't sound angry, he sounded shattered. Because suddenly his entire childhood changed too. Every memory, every family photo, every introduction, everything. Did they know? He whispered finally. Charles's silence answered him. Nathan covered his mouth instantly. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw genuine guilt in his eyes. Not pity, guilt. I didn't know, he said quietly while staring at me. I believed him. That was somehow the worst part. Nathan never questioned my suffering because he genuinely accepted it as normal. That's what privilege does. It blinds people so completely they stop noticing cruelty happening directly beside them. The preliminary DNA results arrived at 1:12 a.m. I remember the exact time because no one in that room breathed while Claire opened the encrypted lab email. Charles stood frozen beside the windows overlooking Manhattan. Nathan sat forward silently. Olivia gripped his hand tightly, and I felt strangely numb, like my body already knew before my mind caught up. Claire read the report once, then again, her expression softened immediately. Charles, his head lifted instantly. It's confirmed. Silence, then probability of biological relationship 99.998%. Charles closed his eyes. Actually closed them like the weight of 23 years suddenly crashed into him all at once. Then he started crying, not politely, not quietly, real grief. The kind powerful men usually hide from the world. Oh my God, he whispered brokenly. She found you? I stood there unable to move, because suddenly everything made sense. The missing documents, the basement, the rules, the fear. The way Eleanor panicked any time I asked questions. I was never unwanted. I was stolen. Charles walked toward me slowly like he was afraid I might disappear, then carefully handed me another photograph. This one showed the same dark-haired woman holding a toddler beside a lake. On the back, written in elegant handwriting, "My Brianna deserves a beautiful life." My throat closed instantly. "She named you Brianna Ashford Whitmore," Charles whispered. That was your real name? Real name. I started crying before I even realized it. 23 years. 23 years believing I was born to serve people who never loved me. And somewhere out there, my real mother spent years searching until grief destroyed her heart completely. Olivia quietly left the room crying. Nathan stayed seated motionless staring at the floor. Then finally he looked up at me. Or maybe truly saw me for the first time. I called you the house girl. The shame in his voice felt real. I didn't answer, because honestly, there are some wounds apologies cannot reach. Then Claire's phone rang. She listened silently for several seconds before hanging up. The FBI has enough for warrants. Charles's expression darkened instantly. What charges? Human trafficking fraud. Child identity suppression? My stomach twisted violently. This was real now, completely real. Nathan stood abruptly. My parents would never traffic a child. Claire met his eyes calmly. They already found payment records. The room froze again. $15,000, she continued quietly. That's what the transfer cost in 2003. Transfer, like I was inventory, not a child. Something inside Nathan visibly broke after hearing that. Then Charles looked at me gently. Brianna, you don't have to go back there ever again. Back there, the basement, the furnace, the concrete floor. For the first time in my life, freedom felt possible. Then Claire delivered the final sentence that changed everything forever. The FBI wants to execute the arrests tomorrow morning. And suddenly, the family who spent 23 years controlling my life was about to lose everything. The FBI arrived at the Hale estate at 6:14 the next morning. I remember the exact time because for 23 years, that house controlled every second of my life. And now men in dark jackets with federal badges were walking through the front doors while Gregory Hale stood frozen in the marble foyer still wearing his silk robe. For once, he looked small. Charles insisted I didn't have to be there. Claire agreed, but I went anyway, not for revenge, for closure. 3 black SUVs lined the circular driveway while agents moved calmly through the property securing documents, electronics, financial records. The same mansion that once felt untouchable suddenly looked fragile, artificial, like the illusion had finally cracked. Eleanor was crying when I entered the foyer beside Charles. Actually crying, not elegant tears, panic. Mascara streaking down her face. The woman who once told me I was born to serve now looked at me like I held the power to destroy her life. Interesting how quickly roles change. Brielle, she whispered desperately. Then stopped herself. No, not Brielle anymore. Charles corrected her quietly. Her name is Brianna. Something about hearing my real name spoken aloud inside that house nearly shattered me. Brianna Ashford Whitmore, not the basement girl. Not the housekeeper, not the invisible child standing beside kitchen doors. Me. Gregory tried keeping control even while agents searched the study. This is ridiculous, he snapped. We raised her. One FBI agent looked up from a box of forged records. You trafficked her. The silence afterward felt enormous, because for the first time in 23 years, someone finally said it plainly. No euphemisms. No excuses. No, we saved you. Just the truth. Nathan arrived 20 minutes later looking like he hadn't slept at all. The second he saw agents carrying evidence boxes from Gregory's office, his entire face collapsed. Olivia stayed beside him silently, but not close enough to comfort him. That marriage already looked broken. Nathan walked toward me slowly. I didn't know, he whispered again. I believed him. And honestly, that made everything sadder. Because cruelty becomes dangerous when good people decide not to notice it. He looked around the foyer helplessly. The basement? His voice cracked. Oh my God. For the first time in his life, Nathan finally saw the house exactly the way I did. Not luxury, a prison. Eleanor suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me. Agents paused. Charles froze. Even Gregory looked stunned. Please, she sobbed. We gave you a home. I stared down at her silently. And suddenly I remembered every single thing at once. The concrete floor, the locked door, the bamboo cane, eating leftovers alone beside the sink while they celebrated holidays upstairs. You gave me captivity, I said quietly. Her crying got louder instantly. Gregory's expression hardened. She would have died without us. No, Charles interrupted coldly. My sister would have raised her. That ended the conversation completely. Because beneath all Gregory's excuses, beneath Eleanor's tears, was one undeniable fact. Somewhere out there, a mother lost her daughter forever because these people wanted control more than conscience. Agents found everything eventually. Fake medical documents, cash transfer records, old burner phones connected to trafficking intermediaries from 2003. Every lie collapsed piece by piece. By noon, Gregory and Eleanor Hale were formally arrested on federal trafficking and fraud charges. Neighbors watched from manicured lawns as they were escorted into black SUVs. The same neighbors who once admired the perfect Hale family. Funny how quickly perfection disappears once truth enters the room. 3 months later, the trial dominated national headlines. The basement girl case, that's what media outlets called it. Gregory received 18 years. Eleanor received 12 after attempting a plea deal. Several trafficking intermediaries tied to the original network were reopened under federal investigation. Nathan lost his job within weeks. Olivia quietly annulled the marriage 6 months later. And me, for the first time in my life, I got to choose who I wanted to become. Charles helped restore my legal identity completely. New passport, birth certificate, social security records, every document the Hales stole from me before I could even speak. The Whitmore Trust my mother created before her death had grown to nearly $13 million over 23 years. But strangely, the money mattered less than the truth, because no amount of wealth compares to finally understanding you were loved all along. A year later, I moved into a small dorm room at Yale, not a mansion, not a luxury estate, just a quiet room with sunlight through real windows. And every single morning, I still wake up early out of habit. Only now, instead of scrubbing marble floors, I sit beside the window drinking coffee while studying psychology. I want to work with trafficking survivors someday. People like me. On my desk beside my textbooks sits a framed letter my mother wrote before I was taken. The final line says, "You were born deserving love, not servitude." I read that sentence every morning. Because after 23 years of being told I was nothing, I finally learned the truth. I was never born to serve them. I was born to survive them. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional family drama stories. And tell me honestly in the comments, if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie, would you forgive the people who raised you?